Hi everybody, this is a very important lesson. So definitely type along and make sure you understand all the parts of this because we're going to build on this idea a lot. So the foundations are going to be really key. In this program that I've got, I am painting the background white. And then you might remember I did this originally when we talked about colors. But the command color, you give it an amount of red and green and blue. And what it does is mixes together those colors. And it gives you the output color. So the output color is what you get when you combine that amount of red and green and blue. So actually, let's give it some other just random values. Okay, so I don't know what color this is going to be, but I've got a lot of red, a little bit of green, and like a little bit of blue. Okay, so when it combines those colors, it gives me an output color, which I'm saving as an integer, because every single color for the computer is a unique integer. And then I'm saying, let's use that integer to be my fill color. So usually before, we've been doing this. We fill with a color. Here I'm just splitting it into two separate statements, where first I create the color and save it into a variable, and then I tell fill to fill with that color. And now I'm drawing an ellipse centered at 400, 400, whose width and height are 30, 30. So let's run it and make sure it works before we start the lesson. And there it is. It turns out to be this lovely shade of kind of lavender, kind of dark lavender. All right, so what's the lesson? The lesson is, if you want any of these things to change, you need to make it a variable. So for example, if I want the x-coordinate of my ellipse to change, you need it to be a variable. Because if it's not a variable, every single time you draw the ellipse, it's always this fixed number. So let me show you what I mean. Whenever you create variables, you always create them at the very, very top here. So I want to create an int called x. And then you usually don't give x its value up here. You do that inside setup. So I'm going to create x equal to 400. And then here is where I'm going to use it. I'm going to say I want to draw my ellipse at an x-coordinate of x. So far nothing's changed. Before this said 400. Now I'm creating an integer and putting 400 inside the integer, and then I'm telling my ellipse to draw at that x-coordinate, but inside x is always 400. So if I run it, you'll see that it's exactly the same as before. But let me show you what you can do. If you wanted to, you could say x equals x plus 1. And if you remember what that does, that's like saying take the current x-coordinate, add 1, and save it back into x. So now, as draw loops 30 times a second, I'm going to draw my ellipse at 400, but then I'm going to add 1 to it. And so then the next time I hit ellipse, now the x variable contains 401. And then as I continue to run this in a loop, I'll add 1 again, and then next time it will be 402. So you can see when I run it, the x-coordinate is slowly going up, and we have a moving circle. Okay, what if we don't want to use this variable to control the x-coordinate of the ellipse? Let's make that 400 again. What if we want to put it here? So here, this is the width of the ellipse. So now, even though we named our variable x, remember the name is just for us. It doesn't really matter. We could call it Bob. We could call it Sally. Really what matters is the number inside and how we're using it. So here, we're using the number to control the width of the ellipse. So now the width is going to start off at 400, and it's going to slowly get bigger. Let's see what that looks like. So there you go, width of 400 getting slowly bigger. If we wanted to use x for the width and the height, now the whole size of the ellipse is going to get slowly bigger. Okay, let's change this back to 60, 60. I just want to show you all the places where we can use variables. So let's set the starting value of x to be 0. And now let's use it here. Let's put x right here where we make color. So what that means is that we're going to make a color with no red, because x starts at 0. And here we're using it in the position for red. But then as our draw loop continues, the circle's not going to move anymore because we're still using numbers. But instead, as x goes up, we're going to slowly increase the amount of red in the color that we're creating to fill it. So let's see what that looks like. So you see it's going from blue to kind of purple to kind of pink. And it's going to get more and more pink. And then pretty soon here it should become red. Oh, sorry, it's not going to get red. Sorry, it's not going to get totally red because we still have these other colors here. But if we wanted to make this 0, 0, let's do it one more time. So here we're getting more and more and more red over time. So here's the big takeaway lesson. The big takeaway lesson is the number that you put in each position controls something very specific about what you see. And so if you make that instead of a number, if you make it a variable, now you can make that particular aspect of what you're seeing change over time.